Players present Tell Tales, a series of monologues written and performed by members of the Apollo Theatre Company. Digging Up the Past, written and directed by Chris Hicks, with Martin Ward as Cal.
I've always thought of myself as a fairly easygoing sort of bloke. I mean, I never try to let things wind me up. As far as I'm concerned, life's too short to spend valuable time worrying about things you can't change. I've always been the same. Even at school, nothing really fazed me, but, well, these last few weeks have really pissed me off. I'm not joking. See, I landed this job, site manager on a major local development. Community sports hall, gym, swimming pool, cafe, the full works. A really good earner. I was genuinely looking forward to getting started. The trouble is, the whole thing's been jinxed from the word go. Now, before I carry on, let me make it quite clear I'm not new to this game. I've been in the trade since I was 16. Worked hard, got my certificates. Most guys in my position have been to uni. Well, not me. I had to do it the hard way. See, I didn't really get on at school. I hated it. Couldn't see the point. I mean, who gives a toss about the Industrial Revolution or Roman central heating, as long as you can count your change and fill in your tax returns? I suppose I quite liked technical drawing, and I was fairly good at maths, only the teacher couldn't stand the sight of me. Mr. Warwick. Toffee-nosed git. What my dad used to call a country squire. Anyway, that's beside the point. Fact is, it was a good job and I was looking forward to getting started. Now, the land is on school playing fields, which caused a few rumblings from some of the locals to start with. Well, not that I was going to lose any sleep over that. Every change meets some sort of opposition, and you invite them to a fancy presentation, PowerPoint, scale model, wine, nibbles. Tell them how much you value their opinion, then ignore them. 90% of the whinging minority are put off that way. But 8 days into the job, one of the excavators turned up human remains. Well, that's just what you need when you're working to a deadline. Can't blag your way out of that one. So, of course, they call me over. And there are certain health and safety issues to be addressed. Not to mention the old Bill who turned up before you could say Jack Robinson. Well, scene of crime tape everywhere. And I couldn't even get back to the office. They put a little tent over the area, and there was a couple of guys going to and fro in white boiler suits for the best part of a day before they realised this was none of their business. Then we had the county archaeologists coming down to have a closer look, and they brought in this toffee-nosed git from the Museum of London. Next thing I know, everything's on hold. Well, of course, I was jolly glad we hadn't found what was left of the headmaster's mother-in-law, but on the other hand, an ancient burial can mean very long delays in my line of business. So we waited, while they scraped and scratched and took photos and did whatever else they had to do. Meanwhile, my men were standing around idle. Next thing I know, they want to do some sort of geophysical survey, and all hell breaks loose. It seems we're about to build our sports hall slap bang in the middle of a Saxon burial ground. Now, that might not make you horny, and it certainly doesn't ring my bell, but folks get excited about that sort of thing, so we had to back off. Well, I won't bore you with the details, but if I'm honest, I haven't had a moment's peace since then. I had to go up to head office to explain the situation in person. Well, the chief exec was very sniffy. Anyone would think I'd put the skull there myself. Then, back here, I'm getting it in the neck from the archaeologists and the local government people. Not only did we have to get off site, but my company was held partially responsible for financing the dig, and Muggins here had to go around kissing every available arse just to keep things on an even keel. There was this one guy from London who really got up my nose. He was some sort of bone specialist. Oh, that's old bones, not surgery. And he insisted on everyone calling him doctor, like he was a cut above the rest. I thought, it's all right for you, mate. Some of us have to work for a living. I started calling him Squire. Of course, he didn't get the joke, but I think he guessed I was taking the piss. And then, on top of this, I had the press breathing down my neck and some sort of local history group rumbling around in the background, so you can see why I was a bit stressed. This all kicked off at the beginning of the summer holidays. We were due to get the foundations laid and the first phase of building complete while the school was closed, but by the beginning of September we hadn't even made a start. Now, it's all right for me. I'm still getting paid throughout all this, but most of the other guys are self-employed. They get paid on the spec. They have to go where the work is or they don't make a penny. So, throughout all this, I'm losing good men to a variety of other projects. Anyway, to cut a long story short, the archaeologists were given 6 weeks to finish their survey and dig up what they could. By the beginning of October, I'd managed to get everything on track, ready to get cracking on the following Monday, directly after they'd packed up. Well, in the long run, it was a fairly amicable send-off. The boffins had a bit of a party on the Friday evening after they'd cleared up, and they invited the contractors along to help them celebrate, along with various bigwigs from the local community. Yeah, it was all pretty good-natured. They showed us some of the bits and pieces they'd unearthed. Actually, some of it was quite impressive. Beads and brooches and part of a shield. They put on a display and everything. I was amazed what they could tell from old bones. Then, a couple of days after, early on in the evening of the Sunday, before we were due to get started again, I was having a bit of a wander round the site. Well, it was all very quiet and the sun was getting low, and I saw someone rooting around in one of the trenches. Well, as I got near, I could see it was my old friend, Dr. Snotty. I'd have recognised those jug ears anywhere. So I went over to him and I asked him what he was up to. Well, he was kneeling in the trench and he turned a bit and looked up at me and said, "Oh, hello, old chap," like we were best mates. "Look," he said, "look, I've found something." And he was all excited like a kid, and he held up this bit of muck for me to see. Well, it was then that I lost it. All those weeks of frustration and waiting and hanging about finally got to me. I'm not trying to excuse myself or anything like that. I just want you to understand. I'm not a violent person, and I don't usually let myself get wound up, but when I saw him looking up at me with that excited look on his face, well, I just lashed out. I think I probably only hit him once. I'm not sure, but he fell sideways and I knew immediately that something wasn't right. He landed in the bottom of the trench with his head cocked to one side, and straight away he started to shake violently, like he was having some sort of fit. Well, then, after a moment, he lay still and he was making a sort of snoring sound, and I thought, oh Christ, what have I done? But it was too late, and after a minute or so, he seemed to stop breathing. Oh, my heart was racing, and I felt I was going to puke, but I managed to calm down. Then I went and got a tarp and covered him up and went back to the site office for a strong brew and a think. And when I'd worked it all out in my head, I realised I couldn't stand any more shit. So I went back out and I had a wander round and made sure there was no one else about. Then I filled in the trench, bulldozed it over, wiped the CCTV, just in case. Job done. Well, that was almost 5 weeks ago, and work has been going on like a dream ever since. I had the foundations of the main block laid in record time, 6 feet of concrete. I really thought it would be okay, but on the Monday the police came asking questions, and now they've been back for the 3rd time in as many days, and everything's ground to a halt. Again. They brought in dogs and a heat-seeking device, and they're getting very interested in the area under the main stairwell. We're just waiting for the go-ahead from the local magistrates, and I think they'll be conducting their own excavation before much longer. I begin to think I'm not really cut out for this kind of work.